Hi, everyone. Cole here with a midweek message from Selkirk United Church for Wednesday, October 27th. We're just coming off a very successful roast beef dinner, drive-by edition for the third time. I don't have totals yet, except I know that we officially sold out, so that means 300 people were served a delicious supper on Sunday. Thanks to all who helped out at or before or after the supper. Thanks to all who bought tickets. Thanks also to those who made special donations. We couldn't have done it without any and all of you. Once I hear final totals, I'll pass those along as well. Today for midweek, I've got a couple of things to share with you. The first comes from our United Church Broadview magazine, most recent edition. A short story from writer Linda von Ohm called God at the Lagoon. Linda writes, "Mine is a simple faith. But there are moments when God becomes concrete, touchable. When I recognize that, usually after the fact, it makes me humble. I remember a time when we had just moved to Nanaimo, BC, and my husband had to start work immediately. I was left with a house so full of boxes that there was only a narrow passage, like the walls of a cave closing in on me, to get from room to room. After 3 days, I was frantic. I gave up. I locked the door and got on the bus for a place called Piper's Lagoon. Someone had told me it was a good spot to get away. As far as I could see, I was the only one there. With the ocean roaring around me, I walked along the trail, sobbing and crying out loud all the things I had been muttering to myself for days. Finally, exhausted, I sat on a rock and just stared out at the water. I was surprised, but not startled, when an old man with a walking stick climbed up the trail and asked politely if he could have a seat. I shoved over and gave him room. We talked about a lot of things. I don't remember him asking what was wrong, although it must have been obvious something was, just from the look of me. But after a time, I was no longer frantic, overwhelmed, or lost. I was fine again. When he got up and said goodbye, we wished each other well. In the many, many times I went to Piper's Lagoon during the 6 years we lived in Nanaimo, I never saw that man again. When I look back on that day, I know that was God there in concrete form when I needed him." It's from Linda van Ohm. And the second comes from Christy Michael Gilliland, who shares some thoughts on an old fable. Christy says, "The other day I heard an old fable called The Astrologer Who Fell into a Well. Apparently, this ancient joke, which originally appeared in Plato's Theaetetus, was so popular that it found its way into the famous Aesop's Fables collection. Over the following centuries, this fable was told again and again, with each author telling it a little differently." Christie says, "My favorite version comes from none other than Thomas Aquinas in 1274. When Thales was leaving his house to look at the stars, he fell into a ditch. While he was bewailing the fact, an old woman remarked to him, 'You, O Thales, cannot see what is at your feet, and you expect to see what is in the heavens?' That reminds me of all the times my mother has told me that I'm heavenly minded, but no earthly good. She usually laughs after she says that. Usually." Christie continues, saying, "I find it ironic that the church often used this fable to criticize those who believe in astrology. How often have religious people in general become so wrapped up in theology, prophecy, devotion, and all the trappings of the faith, and remained seemingly oblivious to what's happening right in front of them? What if, when we read this fable, we replace Thales with the church? I guess my point is," he continues, "that we shouldn't let ourselves become so distracted by all those religious things that we forget to open our eyes to what's happening all around us. Some of the most religious regions of the world are also some of the most impoverished, illiterate, and crime-infested. Even in the US, we see this same trend in the Bible Belt states. Could there be a connection? Personally, I think there's a solid connection. It's okay to pursue high and lofty theological and spiritual ideas, but we shouldn't be doing it at the expense of seeing what's right in front of us. Today, try to be present and aware of what's happening around you. See the faces, listen to the voices, take notice of your own reactions, and be compassion. Blessings. That was shared by Christy Michael Gilliland. A good reminder that as Christians, we are not just called to be people of faith who do nothing but think about God and eternity. We are called to be disciples of Jesus Christ, who taught us how to love one another and care for one another and offer compassion and healing and food and clothing and many other tangible things that will show through our actions what being faithful really means. Good words for us today. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a great day. Blessings, and bye for now.